Hello, 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 and welcome back. I'm Kieran, your host, and I don't know the name of this podcast yet, but we're going to roll with it as what it's developing to be. So, today, I really want to focus on a topic that has been a little near and dear to me in a sense that I've been working a lot to understand this concept, and as well as I think a lot of people have been really harnessing in on attachment styles, where that's not what we're going to talk about today. I think what's really helpful in understanding attachment styles and what we're going to talk about today, which is emotional unavailability, is that we as a culture really enjoy learning our diagnosed things, even if they're self diagnosed. It definitely has helped me to understand myself way deeper, having understood attachment styles and then picking which one that I am right now, and dependent on situation and characters in my life that are either influencing the flux of that or noticing that I'm shifting from one or the other based on romantic relationships or that lack thereof. So, something about what happens when we decide to diagnose ourselves is that we decide that we are this and get really attached to the idea that we are this. And I have kind of been doing the same thing, going around saying, oh, I'm fearfully avoidant and I'm emotionally unavailable. And I think that also there's this really big power in language, and it creates a response in the body and in the nervous system that when we tell ourselves that we are this, say, I am emotionally unavailable, it validates our minds and our brains and our bodies, but it also has a sort of counterintuitive effect that can be slightly negative, in that we believe that's all we really are. And then we identify with that and go around the world as that said thing. And I've been really curious about this term, emotionally unavailable, because I've been using it for a long time. I've been using it since my past breakup. That was back in basically December, unofficially, and then officially. I've been using it since prior to that. I had just returned home from moving away out of the state to Montana originally, and I was dabbling in some experiences with men, and I just was not available really, and because I was grieving a situation. So, where this all sort of churns inside me, present day, has been something that's been ringing on my mind. And I think a lot of people can relate that it's easier to say that we're emotionally unavailable than to actually take a little deeper look and say maybe that I am not entirely emotionally available because of this, and maybe look for the why in the situation. So let's just start by understanding what emotional unavailability is. And it is defined as when a person is unable or unwilling to fully engage with their own emotions or the emotions of others, especially in the context of closer intimate relationships, often leading to challenges in maintaining intimate relationships. So, emotional unavailability is a barrier to true emotional intimacy. The person may be physically present, even charming or engaging at times, but emotionally there's a wall. And so I feel this a lot because, as being a woman who is very talented and very multifaceted and really has a great work ethic, yes, I'm talking about myself, there's a lot of attraction points to me. And it's something that the average person sees you and they're allured by you, but there's a disconnect because even though physically and presently I may appear a certain way, internally and emotionally, I may not actually be ready and willing to step into something deeper than what I have created and what I'm used to and cultivated in my time. Emotional unavailability can be seen as being guarded or emotionally disconnected from others. It's avoidance of deep connection or surface level interactions. When a person has difficulty with vulnerability or avoids intimacy, the inability to express emotions, sometimes having defensive behavior, feeling uncomfortable when others express strong emotions. I know sometimes, especially at first when I'm talking to someone, if there's like a really intensity to them, I can almost be off put, where I'm concerned maybe they're a bit love bomby or they're coming on too strong or they're expressing their true selves in an intimate way that is actually more than my capacity to handle. And I find that to be greatly uncomfortable at times. Emotional unavailability can be seen as distance and detachment, and often the emotionally unavailable person will suppress a lot of their emotions because they're telling themselves that they're not quite ready for that type of a connection, or they're still lingering into the past of the last connection that they had prior, or they're in such a space that is this longing for a partner and longing for vulnerability, but actually unable to really achieve that and give that to themselves, which leads to deep, deep suppression. And it comes across as super avoidant, but inside that internal landscape of the emotionally unavailable person, it's really a longing for something greater that they're unknowingly incapable of giving themselves. It's also a trouble with commitment. I think commitment is a really, really big word. And it's something that I have personally spent a lot of time trying to understand where that comes from in my placement of interactions. Commitment is, it's a complete fear of this really wild unknown, and it's something that the person, I should say myself, feels like they're putting themselves in a cage. And really, the cage is just mental thought. The fear, I feel like it comes from having a lot of weight emotionally put on one thing, so much so that all the other options that are still there and available to you, you can't see. It's like they don't exist anymore. And the fear of being boxed in is stronger than the capacity to let the emotions go and freely kind of flow. I think that commitment comes with its own emotional weight because I am genuinely giving myself fully and 100% to this person or this gym membership or this yoga membership. It really could be absolutely anything. Committing myself to this discipline of a diet that may change something. It may change my lifestyle. I think it comes with a bunch of little micro fears of the repercussion of the action. If I commit to this person, then I might feel like I'm insecure about if this is the right person for me, because then they're the only person that's I'm going to have for the rest of the next 50 years of my life. And it's less about the incapability to commit and more about the fears that are backed behind it all. And I just think that commitment is such a big such a big topic, and maybe I should make a whole episode based on that, but I digress. So the emotionally unavailable person may not recognize their own unavailability. And I think that has a lot to do with going throughout your life, and maybe if you're a single person, and you've been single for a while and you've gotten really comfortable in that sense of singleness, when someone else comes into your life, it starts to bring up and stir the pot, because you start to have to make sacrifices. You have to start putting yourself or your energy into another being, and that can be startling. It can be a lot to feel like your time is being given away or used with someone else. It can be a little scary to change your plans and the things that you are used to being able to do in order to fit someone else into your lifestyle. It might not be something that you even recognize until you're actually in those situations with another person and in relationship with another person. So there's more, and it's the inability to consistently connect. That's something that has definitely come up for me, because I recognize that I am in a stage of my life where I may be a little bit more reflective and I think attached to the past. And if someone were to walk into my life in a way that felt like this could be going somewhere more than a genuine friendship or something romantic actually started to happen, I don't feel like it would be the mature, wise decision for me to step into a relationship with someone if I'm genuinely considering their feelings. And that will create an inconsistency, because on some days I'll be hot and I'll be into the connection and maybe a little flirty or enjoying the attention of it, because that's another big quality of being human, is it feels good to feel loved, right? And then I might have those cold days where I'm way more in the past. I'm reflecting again and I'm expressing inconsistency, and I might go distant, or I might get a little cold. And that is not a secure relationship. I think recognizing that within myself has been truly challenging, because if, I really wanted to continue a connection with somebody, if I wanted to be emotionally mature about it, I would have to say that it's something that I couldn't get myself deeper into until I was done reflecting into the past. And reflection into the past is not even reflection, but a maybe longing for the past, a grieving for the past. And that past could have consisted of a romantic partner that was really important to you. And that part is what creates emotional unavailability too. It's not listed here, and I didn't see anything about it online, but I think that it's really valuable to add that being stuck in the past and not the present will make you emotionally unavailable, because you're not creating and allowing the space to flow in the present moment enough to create clarity and openness. I think I'll get back to this list because there's two that are really, really big on here, and I want to kind of jump to a really amazing intellectual speaker, Alan Watts. I did some research on this topic because I find that he is so intelligent and really has changed my perspective in a lot of ways, and wise ways, and also beautiful ways. And he looks at emotional unavailability in the light of detachment. And he sees detachment as this ability to observe experiences, including emotions, without being overwhelmed by them. However, clinging to the emotions or trying to control them is what will lead to the suffering. So when we hear the word detachment, it kind of feels aggressive, and we associate detachment with avoidance and separation, and it's scary. I think also detachment feels like ghosting, or I want to say maybe going silent and retreating. But I think in the light that Alan is speaking of it's the sensation to understand the situation and allow it to not overwhelm your nervous system and really corrupt and hijack your emotions about a situation. It's a form of releasing, and I would say like deeper seated than letting go. And so he proceeds to say that from this perspective, someone perceived as emotionally unavailable might be operating from a place of clinging to the need to control their emotions or resisting certain feelings, potentially leading to avoidance or withdrawal. And I think the word clinging really sticks out to me alongside control. And I feel that seeing emotional unavailability as a sense to really be human, but control our emotions. And in that sense that we feel like we have control over our emotions, because really we only have control over our reactions. Our emotions are thoughts that become feelings. So we think that we have all this power to control. And if I can control my mind, then I can control my heart and I can not get attached. Is that right? And I can, if I control my emotions about the situation, maybe meeting a romantic partner, then I won't get attached too fast and I can feel like I'm able to self-regulate my own nervous system. Alan says attachment to a particular outcome or fear of vulnerability, because love thrives off of freedom and openness, prevents them from embracing the natural flow and impermanence of relationships. I think that is so profound, because when we try to control our emotions, we're not opening our hearts and our souls to the natural ebb and flow of what creation has set in store for us. And I am essentially holding myself back when I'm trying so hard to manipulate the environment in front of me. He says love thrives off of freedom and openness, and if that's what love thrives off of, then checking that and almost questioning yourself when you're feeling emotionally unavailable, like how am I rejecting freedom in love for myself? How am I rejecting openness in this situation and in this moment? I think it's so powerful to be able to pause and notice what you're feeling when you're feeling it, but also the ability to not become absorbed in it. And I think that that's what happens when the feelings and thoughts just collide and they become this big, deeper emotion that sits. Resisting the inherent flux and seeking to keep their emotional landscape fixed and unchanging out of fear or habit. So that goes back to the need to control. It's a fear. It's a habit. It's how you taught yourself to remain safe when you were a child and your parents completely dysregulated and functioned dysfunctionally. And I think it's an inherently wise aspect of the human soul. And when used in a proper way, that isn't pushing away things that we love and we desire, but actually can be used in a sense of judgment and discernment of what is really good for me and what is really not good for me, that the control can be helpful. Resistance to emotions associated with vulnerability, loss, or fear, which leads to shutting down or distancing from others. We kind of already talked about or read through that with this idea of a fear of vulnerability. And in a very real, relatable thing is that vulnerability is what we fear the most, but it's what brings us together ultimately the most just as much. When someone is truly scared to express themselves in a deep way, there's a chance they may not be connected to that side of themselves, but there's also a part of them that greatly, greatly craves that connection. And it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that because they want that connection so deeply, they will do almost everything in their power to shut it down. It also stems from a fear of really looking at the past. Sometimes we can spend too much time in the past, but I think in this sense, it's a lack of wanting to reflect on what's happened to me in my past and think about it again. And not only think about it, but when we talk about it with someone else, even in a romantic setting or intimate setting, that person is now walking through a door to your soul that you're not willing to share because maybe you don't want to think about it anymore, and it's not something you've ever wanted to reflect on ever again once it's already happened. I mean, we see this a lot with PTSD, and when the memories come up, a lot of the times it brings up alcoholism. So this can often lead people to just shut down instead. And the shutdown is when their nervous system has overloaded with information, and it's a storehouse of this information that they're unwilling to get up and out. They're unwilling to release. And usually this happens when you're arguing with someone who's being distant or expressing avoidance and expressing emotional unavailability, and you're maybe a more anxious partner that really wants the connection. You really want to have a deep conversation about what's been bothering you. You maybe got to a point where the rug is a mountain and you're tired of sweeping shit underneath it. And you decide that because I'm ready, this person now has to be ready for me too. And that is a big mistake, because that person who is shutting down or is on the brink of shutting down is going to express to you and make you feel like you are not cared for and like you do not matter. But it's actually less about you and more about them. So story time and a little break, because this has been a solid clip of time of intense intense reflection here. I was with a partner who I loved very dearly, but I made that mistake of when I'm ready to talk about it, it's the time to talk about it, because there were so many times that we were in situations where problems would arise, but we both agreed to never do that in public and never talk about or get angry in public or fight in public. So then it always felt like everything was getting brushed under the rug. And whenever there was time to talk about it, I personally didn't want to ruin the moment. And so I shut a lot of that down and suffered a lot of that and held the weight of that in the relationship, because if I didn't bring it up, then I felt like it was never going to get talked about. And for that person, it didn't necessarily need to get talked about. They were okay with I would say they thought it was letting go, but they were okay with emotionally carrying a lot of that and pretending like we created some sort of resolution because we didn't just immediately get angry at one another. And so this led to a lot of conversations that happened in wrong moments, and where sometimes it felt like I was forcing that person to finally sit down and talk to me. And instead of it just being maybe even like a scheduled time and day, like, okay, we have a little time here, let's just talk this through and get through it and come out stronger as a couple. And in fact, the opposite would usually happen. And this person wasn't necessarily capable of holding all my emotions. I took that as a personal attack. I took that as they don't have space for me and they can't meet my needs. And while that could be well and true, it also was selfish of me to not be more compassionate for their regulation of their nervous system. Granted, maybe they weren't being compassionate for mine either. And if communication in a relationship is difficult, then it's going to be difficult. That's not saying there's room for improvement, and I'm always super hopeful for that. But whenever we would finally get to talk about things, because it took so long to get there, the situation itself ended up feeling more weighted and more heavy and like a more extreme topic. And it ended up steamrolling into 10 other topics that were also bothering me, that were just basically opened like a can of worms for this one idea that was on my mind and that we started to argue about. And what happens is the other partner had a tendency to shut down after a certain amount of time. And I got mad because before the shutting down came very defensive behavior. And I didn't understand why this person felt the need to just defend themselves and why they couldn't just open up and be there for me and listen to me and understand and not only look at themselves and all these other self-reflections of really myself that I was projecting on him. Something we really tend to do when in relationship is we don't necessarily listen to what the other person is saying. I think we struggle to look at the other person for who they are and not who we want them to be. And we have expectations on our partners that project our actual fears of being with them and insecurities about ourselves. And in the heat of the moment, a lot of the times what we really should be doing is not talking about it, and we should just be hugging. But instead, when we start to bring up these really difficult conversations, it leads to shutting down because it becomes a tumbleweed. It doesn't become we have one topic to talk about tonight and then let's resolve that. It becomes now 10 topics that we have been arguing over for months with no resolution, and one is extremely frustrated and the other one is extremely sad and feeling misunderstood and so on. And it really turns into this pit of aggression about what is not even the problem. What this has to do with emotional unavailability is if you're with someone who, even in relationship, can sometimes express tendencies. I'm not saying full blown, like I said with the whole diagnosis part, there's tendencies, and that's what I'm talking about here. And what really has to happen is a stepping back, a sense of mutual respect and patience for that person, and compassion to try to understand where they're at. And this doesn't mean a deep dive into their emotional landscape. It really just means that you want to understand where this person is coming from and not just put yourself over them and project onto them what's you're really feeling on the inside, if you're that self-aware. Compassion helps when it comes to people wanting to shut down. And Alan Watts, amazing man, encourages individuals to move beyond the fear of the unknown and embrace the natural flowing nature of existence. Emotional unavailability from Wattsian perspective might stem from an attempt to resist the flow creating a self-imposed prison of emotional restriction and hindering authentic connection. So emotional unavailability is almost this self-imposed because of fear and trauma from potential childhood and inconsistencies or even potential past relationships to get involved in a deeper way with anyone else, because you can't really get involved deeply with anyone else until you deeply connect with yourself. And you can deeply connect with yourself but also still not be able to express that to others. And that's the tricky part. I think that when we're single, like I was saying earlier, we get really comfortable in that. And when someone else comes in, they challenge us. They awaken parts of us that we didn't need to look at when we were single because we were just feeling fucking good all the time. Maybe, maybe not, as long as we're in the present, right? Things are easy. We don't have to report back to anybody. There's no commitment, no fear. I can just do what I want. And then someone walks in and it's like, oh shit, I have to be emotional. I have to care about this person more than I'm used to caring about myself. And maybe I really haven't been caring about myself. I don't know. So I think that Alan really wraps it up beautifully with these two quotes. We confuse entanglement with connection, and we think that to love we must suffer. But what is true love is simply presence without possession. Possession comes again with the fears of control and itemizing a person, itemizing a soul, that I need this person in my life. But true love is simply presence. To stand near another soul without trying to mold, fix, or hold. What if the deepest act of compassion is to honor another's journey without letting it drown yours? To be emotionally detached is not to be indifferent. It is to recognize that clinging to every ripple of emotion is like trying to hold the wind in your hands. It will exhaust you. It will confuse you, and it will never bring you peace. There are times when silence is wiser than speaking. Whew. Oh, Alan, you get me. You steal my heart every time. And I greatly wish that I always saw the world in your perspective. So we've really gone over a lot here. But what do we do? What happens when the emotionally unavailable person creates a wall? And this wall psychologically has been seen as a victim mentality, actually, and an overly focused aspect on themselves, where it's almost a like woe is me complaining. It's a negativity and sometimes a repressed anger, depending on why the wall is there. And so the wall, I had a partner who was very fond of his wall, and it was almost offered up as like a challenge to break it down. And what that didn't tell me at the time, besides challenge accepted, was that this person was proud of their inability to connect. I don't even think they knew it was an inability to go deep with someone. I don't think they had ever had a depth with anyone, actually, in that sense, or a depth of connection with anyone in that sense. And they built a wall because they were hurt. And my empathetic self was like, oh, I feel for them and I understand why you have a wall. And the other part challenged me and greatly attracted me because I wanted to break it down. I wanted to be more powerful than that wall. I wanted to be more important to them than the wall that they carried. And it really came with this self-absorbency. Now let's all put ourselves in the perspective of having a wall up, right? What does that do for you? Well, it protects my emotions. It keeps me from getting too attached. Having a wall up will make me feel like I'm in control of my emotions. Like I don't need to let anyone in too closely. Like, what else will a wall do for me? A wall will keep me from having any connection that I actually might really want. I might really care for this person, but in my heart, I might still believe that they're actually really capable of hurting me. And maybe the last one hurt me a lot. And if I let this even a brick down, they'll do the same thing that the last one did. Or they'll do the same thing that my mom did or my dad did. Now, on the receiving side of that, when you're with someone who has a wall up, that feels like shit. You feel, or let's say I feel rejected as fuck. I feel dysregulated because all this energy and love that I'm putting into this situation or relationship, situationship, probably, maybe, I'm not feeling it's reciprocated back. And then I may communicate that I need more from you and I need you to reciprocate this information back. But just because something's communicated, I then put an expectation on it when in reality, it doesn't mean that anything has to get done. And I think that's also something that is overlooked in relationships, because when I ask for something, I want to bet that I'm going to guarantee get it instantly. And that's not how people change or operate. And sometimes people can't change. So I higher my expectation because I'm asking for something. And with someone who has a wall up, it's going to take a long time to undo that cement work. So as someone who's on the receiving end of it, it feels like crap because you don't feel as appreciated, needed, and respected as to match the energy that you're putting into it with that other person. And so walls seem glamorous and they seem safe, but they're genuinely denying anyone of any real connection. It makes you very shut and closed off, which Alan said is not what helps relationships. Openness and freedom is what helps a relationship prosper. But we have to be ready for it, and we can't force someone to be ready for it. So that leads me into a very, very buzzy topic when it comes to emotional unavailability, which is breadcrumbing. And to be clear, if you're unfamiliar with what breadcrumbing means, it's when someone gives you just enough attention and affection to keep you interested, but not enough to build a meaningful relationship. It's a form of manipulation where they send you inconsistent signals, making you feel confused and then hopeful and then possibly insecure. And examples of breadcrumbing are inconsistent communication or just long periods of silence. I think, to continue on that, but why people breadcrumb is because genuinely it feels good to connect and flirt and feel like you have a relationship, or it feels good to have attention. I think that's why people completely breadcrumb. More examples of this are vague promises, hinting at future plans or deeper connection without committing to anything specific. That really follows through into actions not matching words and lack of follow through. And this can be as simple as asking you out on a date, and then the day comes and suddenly they're busy. Feels like shit. This can be, so many things. I really relate to this topic in a sense of the receiving end of it. Like, I like to kind of look at both worlds. So the receiving end of it, the person who's getting breadcrumbed is eager. They're excited. They're maybe ready for the connection. They're hopeful and wanting something deeper and something real. And the expectations to reciprocate all of that positive emotion is that the other person gives it back to them. And the thing about breadcrumbing is that it has the high behind it. When the person does come through and maybe they do follow through after like 6 non-follow throughs, then it keeps you in a spiraling loop of, but there's hope and they will change and they're doing good. They did so good. And, you know, even if it's literally apology flowers, which, yuck. It makes my heart sad for everyone out there who's listening to this, who has gotten more apology flowers than happy celebratory flowers. And I'm one of them. Not in entirety, but in a single relationship. It really is sad. And I feel for you, anyone out there. Drop it in the comments. I want to relate. I want to feel y'all. And we can get through it together. And maybe one day I'll send everyone flowers if I can afford it. Anyway, so like this push and pull of expectation and denial and dismiss, and then expectation and gratification and connection creates emotional manipulation, not actually a solid foundation. And it's the breadcrumber using your desire for connection to keep you hooked, but not actually reciprocating your feelings. And that goes into a spectrum. And the spectrum can go into narcissism tendencies. I am not here to give you information to diagnose, to evaluate your whole life and put a title on everything that is existing in front of you. It's tendencies in my case. But this creates unclear intentions. They avoid defining the relationship or discussing their feelings and will go silent when challenged with it. And this is seen a lot when you're friend-zoned, but they still want to hug and kiss you and kind of reap the benefit of a relationship without actually having the title of a relationship. And I honestly could make a whole other podcast on this about how much dating is such a challenge. And I think we've heard and felt, maybe experienced firsthand so much about this. But unclear intentions lead to confusion. As the one on the other side of this situation, if you feel confused by where you stand with this person, and I'm not talking about it being a week or 2 weeks or even a month into talking to this person. I'm talking about if you're still feeling confused and unclear and like you need to have a conversation with this person about what you are to them and what they think of you to them, because you're feeling genuinely confused after like honestly 2 to 3 months of consistent contact where you're maybe texting more frequently and hanging out like once or more a week, and they're bringing you around to their friends and introducing you and talking about you when you're not around and such. If you're feeling confused about where you stand with this person by that point, granted, a conversation might be helpful, but it also could be a good check-in point with yourself to think of, you know, not only how much does this person actually like me, but how much do I actually like this person? And it's a good point to check in, because if the answer is that you really genuinely like this person and want this person to be a more prevalent part of your life, and you're still feeling confused about what you mean to them, if they haven't made it obvious that they genuinely want to be with you by that point, a couple things. If they're emotionally unavailable, they potentially could be experiencing a couple things: the fear of intimacy, emotional maturity, which is a whole nother topic, keeping their options open, or genuinely fearing being with another person in a way that might change their life. It might alter their daily system of how they function. And they might be feeling a sense of deep sacrifice if I get into this relationship or take it more seriously. Or I might have to look at myself deeper if I get into this relationship and take it more seriously. Or I might have to deal with some of my commitment issues if I want to get into this relationship. So there could be a lot of things happening. And I try to remain compassionate for both sides, as I'm in a place in my life where I definitely have been on both sides of this. I've been the character that just knows in every bone of my body that I want to be with this person, and I'm willing to do absolutely anything to be with this person. And I'm borderline not throwing myself at them, but I'm giving them all the privileges of being a girlfriend when they're giving me breadcrumbs. And I think that that's challenging when you really care about someone that much, that you want to take the relationship to the next level and they're not ready. And then one day out of the blue, they decide that they're ready. And then it feels like heaven on earth that this person wants only me. And we failed to look at the entire foundation of the relationship. I think it's wiser to, and wise doesn't mean without pain. I want to specify that. I'm sighing. But I think it's wiser from the perspective of the person going after someone who's perceivably emotionally unavailable to give them space and courageously back off, because it's healthier to let them figure themselves out than drag you up and down the roller coaster that they're going to do. And I've experienced this myself, being the UE person, tendencies, and I didn't realize that I had begun to do that. I didn't realize that my own actions had begun to alter the emotional state of the person that I was talking to. And this awareness made me take the mature and wise decision, which sucks, to take a step back from the connection so that I didn't destroy it before it could have been something really good. And had I realized this, being the one craving and begging for the UE person in the previous relationship, and instead of just longing for something unobtainable and trying to break down the wall like a challenge, if I had just taken a step back enough for the emotionally unavailable person to spend some time to really, in that space, understand how much they really care about me, and if it's worth it to them to reach out and make that connection lasting and deeper with me, and then come back to me rather than me always coming back to them. It's a very anxious tendency because I was terrified of losing him. And my fear of losing him was so much stronger than my maturity to understand if this is a situation that is feeding my peace or taking it away. And instead, I just clung because I'm so human. And I had a piece of his pie. I wanted the whole dang thing, and I wasn't going to stop until I had the whole thing. And it was almost a sense of trying to force and control the situation with great disappointment around every corner, and almost putting more pressure on that person to get it together now in my time. I want you. You're talking to me and treating me like we're boyfriend, girlfriend. You're telling all your friends about me, and like I still feel confused about what this connection is. And like, I really want to just be your girlfriend at this point. I want to just be the 5-month deep relationship that we're not even there yet, but because I love that and I'm a lover, and you're still just greatly resisting me, and it hurts like hell. So I think it's super wise, and something I've learned more recently as we go through this path of life, that if you are experiencing any tendencies of emotional unavailability, figuring out why this is, and maybe noticing any projections that are happening between you and this other person. And the projection could be them feeling highs and lows from you. It could be feeling that hot and cold behavior from you because a part of you wants the connection, but a part of you is not ready for it based on whatever that why is for you. And so it might be wiser to step back and lovingly, compassionately explain to this person who genuinely is tender with your feelings. And if you explain it to them in a way that's heartfelt and truthful and to the best of your ability, then that person might have enough empathy to understand, give you the space that you actually want and need, and also come back if you decide after that space that you're ready for it. I don't think that's something that I learned until now. I think it's a really challenging, mature gift to give someone instead of completely sabotaging their relationship because you're emotionally unstable. And that doesn't mean that it's not hard and that it's not sad and that it feels like an ending and an impermanence. But maybe it's a comeback stronger and having time to resolve things instead of gaining more things to resent and sweep under the rug. Big part of this is the impact it creates. And for the person who is being breadcrumbed, it leads to a lot of self-doubt and questioning your worth. Because when all we want is love, honestly, at the end of the day, people, all we want is love. Everyone wants it. No one on this earth doesn't want to just be loved and adored. And when the person we choose to love and adore us feels disconnected and like they don't know how, we start to question ourselves because it's a mirror. That person is a literal mirror for us. And we start to question our own worth, our own choices, our own actions in the moment and in the situations. And it creates so much self-doubt. And that's not to say if this person is genuinely gaslighting you. That is a whole nother spectrum. I am not talking about that. This is just in the sense of your self-worth feeling compromised because you feel like the one you love and adore does not love you back. And this is very tropic to childhood and even a very, very near and dear wound of the father-daughter wound. And when you have a caregiver that doesn't reciprocate the love in the way that you understand and want love to be reciprocated, it makes you feel worthless. It's not maybe intentional, but that's the reaction. If that connection is communicated improperly, it makes you feel worthless. That worthlessness travels into our partners and who we end up choosing. And that brings us to question our self-worth if we continue to choose partners that can't be available to us. Maybe it's something that we're attracting and we just didn't really notice, and it's something to think about. It keeps us very stuck in cycles of holding on to hope for a deeper connection when it's not healthy or realistic, bringing a constant back and forth. Whew. Okay, that was a lot. Okay. I think a lot of information at once can be really jarring. and can really put us into those emotions and mental spaces that are tricky and triggery, because sometimes they help and sometimes it's a rabbit hole. So take this as lightly as you can and think about what you want. Think truly about what you want, whether you're the UE or you're the reciprocal end of that, the receiving end of that. These are things that people learn in childhood, and it creates a trauma response in the body that is really all learned behaviors. One thing I want to continue on with is emotional unavailability and not being over someone or being obsessed with your partner. And I'm at this stage in my life where I went through one of the hardest breakups of my life, and I cannot for the life of me understand why it's so challenging to let someone go. Even when I've changed my life, I have started to recreate myself and learn who I really am and become really secure in that person, and really done beautiful things in the time in between that I should be so much more proud of myself than I am. And I'm sure there's a lot of you listening who can relate to that. And somehow this person still imprints my soul. And it's like since the day we broke up, all I've wanted is to be back with him. And it's very real. And no matter all the good things that I can do for someone else, or even for myself, doesn't wash it away. And I've grappled with this for the past year, and even longer than that in ways, with the avoidance tendencies that I've definitely made myself suffer from, because I definitely want to take some accountability. That's what really charged this topic today, and it's something that's very personal. And I would honestly love to connect with everyone, because I know I'm not the only one who's gone through this. And if you have experienced any of these things that I've mentioned in today's podcast, definitely just comment below. I think as I progress with these podcasts, I'd love to get a little bit less vague. Just a lot of the content is very raw and real right now, and it might still touch the people who are presently also kind of experiencing the flux of it with me. So I'm being a little vaguer in these episodes and some of them, but I promise to be a little more open as time goes on. However, yeah, I'm thinking about creating a space where you can drop your stories and your comments and questions, and I would love to listen to y'all on a more personal level and even bring it into the pod. But I really want to speak to this challenging aspect of a breakup. And I'm not talking about like 3 months later. I'm talking about like almost a year later, and you're still feeling intense emotions for the loss of this soul. I did some research, and I actually found this man, Alan Robarge. He's on YouTube, and he's just a general cool guy. Maybe I'll even like ask him if he wants to come on here. That would be kind of cool. So Alan Robarge has an episode on his YouTube, Obsession with an Ex, and this is free promoting. Like, this guy inspired the shit out of me, so this is just real, y'all. It's not go look this guy up. If you want to, go for it. I pretty much summed it up, but he has great other stuff too, so share the wealth when it comes to good resources. So I'm gonna read this. It's a little bit lengthy, but it's really deep. I might even pause at times. So what we're really dealing with here is an attachment injury, an emotional wound from earlier in life, often in childhood, where a person didn't feel seen, heard, understood, or emotionally safe. Love might have been inconsistent or missing altogether. Maybe they were neglected, dismissed, abandoned, or even abused. And that experience wires the brain in a specific way. So when someone with an attachment injury forms a connection with another person, especially someone who offers even a little bit of love, validation, or warmth, the brain latches on. That person becomes a symbol or placeholder for what the brain has always craved but never fully received: love, acceptance, and emotional safety. Now, if that relationship ends or even just becomes uncertain, even if you know it wasn't healthy, the brain doesn't just let it go. It panics. It gets stuck in a loop, replaying thoughts of the person over and over. And this is because the brain has coded that person as a source of love and connection. Our brain has literally tricked us into basically manipulating us that this person is our holy grail of love and acceptance and safety. So if you're feeling a little down on yourself, that made me feel a little better, not gonna lie. Because I can take a lot of accountability and I love accountability, but that just goes to show that my brain is in such a primal state of trying to source something that I am so lacking. Okay, pause, go back. Source of love and connection. And when that's gone, it feels like a crisis. A deep deprivation. Your nervous system goes into overdrive, hyperactive, anxious, and flooded with intrusive thoughts because the brain is panicking, saying, I've lost my connection, I've lost love, so on. This is the brain in a looping mode, stuck, preoccupied, and unable to move on, because that person isn't just a person anymore. They represent love to you, validation, and connection. And even if you know they're not right for you, your brain has coded them as a source of what you never fully got. I'm going to read that again. Even if you know they're not right for you, your brain has coded them as a source of what you never fully got. And the mind is just trying to resolve the original hurt. Okay, I'm sorry, there's more. So it's not just heartbreak. It's an old wound reactivated. And the mind tries to resolve it by obsessing over that person. But really, it's about what they symbolized. The relationship becomes the brain's way of trying to fill the void that has been there for a long time. This is why healing attachment trauma is not just about letting go of the person, it's about understanding the deeper unmet needs underneath. And it's not really about them. It's about what they symbolized. So often we get stuck on someone, it's because we're still trying to get something from them that we didn't get before. Whether that's validation, belonging, or being chosen. So let's just take a second, digest. So it's not just the loss of a person, the loss of a place. It's really a loss of a feeling. And the feeling is the sense of love that you haven't been able to replace. And not replace with another guy or girl to fill that void. It's you haven't replaced that within yourself. And something that I've really come to learn in my experience this past year going through this breakup is I have done just about everything in my power to keep myself happy and to figure out confidently what I love so that I can feel like I'm giving myself things that I love. And the hard part is that even in doing all of that, the reality is everyone says go find self-love or go find yourself when you feel lost and don't know what to do or lost in a challenging situation and breakup. But it's not really that you find love in yourself and it just goes away. And that feels really crappy to know and hear. It's like people's misconception about being happy and how we should just be happy every single day, and that's what it's like to live a normal life. And the reality is no one on this earth feels happy every day. There's contentment, but it's not just this euphoric goodness every day. Like, we all have things that purposefully challenge us. Otherwise, life would be kind of boring if we were just happy every day and everything was perfect and rainbows and sunshine. So you can find self-love and still have it be inconsistent. Some days feel really good, some days feel really bad. Patient periods of recreating and destroying yourself and proving your worth to yourself and standing up for yourself and gaining a sense of security in who you are. And when you're still feeling so much emotional takeover from the partner that is not with you anymore, the loss tends to kind of imbalance and take over the sense of self-love. Or it can feel a lot like, I do love myself so much and I've learned to take care of myself, but there's still a longing inside. And a longing is really just for love and connection. And we've pinpointed it on this person. It doesn't make it any easier to get over them to know that, though. And that's the little nuggets of realness that I really want to carry through in this podcast, is that everyone wants to give you advice and mentor you and give you the optimist's view. But there's also a lot of truth in that statement, that I can love myself so much and still be longing for the depth of the connection that I felt with that person. And a lot of the times we close ourselves off in that thought and become emotionally unavailable because we're not meeting Prince Charming tomorrow or within a bandwidth of time that we can actually see and be coherent of. It's just unknown to us. We don't know who's going to walk into this world, and it could happen any moment and sweep us off our feet, and then we're like, oh shit, maybe this is a way better connection than the last one I had. Or maybe it just clarifies to you what you consider as a good connection or not. Maybe it just clarifies for you how valuable that last person actually was. And I think that's a lot of the grieving process. We're really just trying to fill a void that is a lack of love. And it's specific to the type of love that we genuinely want. I don't know about y'all, but I am super picky about who I let into my space. And how I hug a person is different to my willingness to let myself be this depth of close with you. If I hug you for a long time, I'm really comfortable with you. I love you. I feel safe. I feel nurtured in your arms. And if I give you a short little quick hug, or maybe even a one-armer, I may not know you that well. And I may feel that guard hasn't been allowed to come down. It's important to notice these things, and it's important to think that, and I'm literally speaking to myself right now, y'all, like, this is so real. Like, I've lost my connection. I've lost love. Like, I hate that for us. I do. I hate that hate's such a strong word, but I'm gonna go with it. I hate that we give the power away of ourselves so willingly because of a feeling that's so remembered. And there's always this quote that sticks with me, and I will take it to the grave, and it's, people don't remember what you told them. People remember how you made them feel. And that is so critical. I may not remember the exact words of the conversation, but I could tell you how I felt in the moment. I could tell you how it made me feel, the way I reacted to that situation. It's just so powerful. And when we're in these deep obsessions where we're looping with this character in our lives of like, I feel really good about myself, I'm having a good day, and then the next day a song comes on that reminds me of them, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so lost, and I wish I was still in the space with them listening to this song and embracing and holding each other, and then, you know, I go down in this spiral. It's so real, and it's a loop, and it's genuinely hard to get out of. I think it's really important to reflect and remind yourself if you're idealizing this person, if they genuinely treated you with respect and kindness, and to not only reflect on the good times. And that's the hard part. We want to be stuck in the lovey, ooey, gooey, dovey part about it, and that's not always the reality. I really liked these two terms. There's such a thing of ambiguous loss and attachment disruption. And I think it's really interesting to think about that an ambiguous loss is when someone is gone, but not completely gone. It's when you're still emotionally attached and still hopeful and still imagining possible futures with this person. And you're kind of keeping the wound open, like you're keeping that door open between the two of you. You haven't really resolved things entirely. Maybe you just stopped talking for a bunch of months, but figure, you know, there's still that thought in the back burner that says, oh, we might actually get back together. And that really hinders your present moment. There's no clear ending, and the space is really just all grief. It's not moving on. So that's ambiguous loss. And then there's attachment disruption, which means the emotional bond you had with your ex still feels unfinished, and your brain is holding on to that connection as if it's an essential for your survival, safety, and identity. So that's attachment disruption. And I clearly resonate with both of these. And if you do too, feel free to relate below. And let me know. It's interesting because the longing that we have isn't just about the person. It's about the feelings we had around him or her. The feeling might represent love, connection, purpose, safety, or even just familiarity. And because your brain has associated that person with those needs being met, even if they really weren't met, it keeps circling back, hoping to restore the bond. Oh, my beautiful, hopeless romantics. The feeling of familiarity is really large here. And I've identified a lot of my life as a noticing when I feel comfortable and when I don't feel comfortable, even as an identity and a solo photo show actually as well, post-college called Familiar Places, even though none of them were familiar and they had a tendency to feel really nostalgic. It was a really beautiful series. You can go see it on my Instagram, actually. And familiar is one of the most powerful sensations because when we don't have it, every alarm bell is going off in our system. But when we do have it, it's almost curbed with addiction, and it can actually be curbed with addiction depending on what you experienced as a child. So familiarity is a slippery slope, and it can tend to lead us into these spaces with people that we like being around them and want to be around them because of that feeling, even if it is a familiar place that we might have outgrown. And I will probably do a whole other topic on that, and I will leave it there. But I want to leave you guys with just a little nugget, again by my love, Alan Watts. Peace isn't something you chase. It's what remains when the chasing ends. With that being said, thank you so much for spending the time in your day to listen. If you found this valuable and want to share it with a friend because you know they're going through it. I'm sure your bestie will be so glad. If you want to connect with me, drop a comment below and don't forget to like and rate this podcast if you feel so inclined that it touched your soul or changed something about your day or just helped you understand yourself deeper. That's the goal. And yeah, I will talk to you all next week.